Welcome to Photoshop User TV, produced by Photoshop User Magazine and the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And here are your hosts, the Photoshop guys, Dave Cross, Matt Kloskowski, and Scott Kelby.
This week's episode is brought to you in part by CDW. For hardware, software, gadgets, and more, CDW has the right technology right now. And iStock Photo, the world's preeminent collection of member-generated royalty-free images and digital art. Azo, makers of high-end monitors for creative and moving image professionals.
Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to a substandard episode of Photoshop User TV, brought to you in part by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, publisher, among other things, of Photoshop User Magazine. Well, welcome. I'm Dave Cross, and there's Matt Kloskowski.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's me, Matt Kloskowski.
Right, with me, Dave. And as you can see, we're missing man formation.
The missing man formation. We haven't been in this formation.
That's right,
in a while.
we haven't.
So Scott's actually, he is helping teach and attend a workshop for the Digital Landscape Workshop Series. He's in Cape Cod. He's out there shooting sunsets, sunrises, all those fun things, lighthouses, cool houses, all those things, with Moose Peterson, Laurie Excel, Joe McNally, and we're here in Tampa.
Right, in a hot studio trying to think about what to talk about.
Not shooting lighthouses.
Not shooting lighthouses. Oh, hey, if you go to Scott Kelby's blog, I know he's posted some examples of some of the shots there, so go check it out. But first.
Well, you know what, our buddy's not here. But we can't let it go by because he's got a brand new book out, and since he's not here, we're going to talk about the book. It's Scott Kelby's 7-point system for Photoshop. It's generated probably one of the most amounts of buzz that I've seen around the internet around a Photoshop book in quite a long time, because everybody's like, yo, what is the 7-point system? What's the deal? The deal is, and what Scott's done in an incredible way, is he's taken the things that we do in Photoshop, because Dave will attest. Generally, when we're out there teaching, people don't come up and say, how do you use levels? They come up and they ask, when do I use levels? When do I sharpen? When do I do this? When do I do that? And what Scott's done is he's taken the workflow and he's done it in just that way. It's a 7-point system. 7 points to your workflow. You follow these 7 simple steps and you do it 21 times in the book, okay? It's not a book of jumping around. There's 21 projects. Each project follows the 7-point system. So you do that, and by the end, you know exactly what to do to fix your photo.
Yeah, it's a very cool idea, and I think a lot of people are going to really take to it.
Generated a huge amount of buzz. We'll be giving one way later on the show. So make sure you visit all the fine bookstores. I'm sure you can purchase it. But it made it up to #1 in stuff on Amazon. Number one in computer books. #1 in computer books on Amazon.
Wow,
so
cool.
very, very, very good accomplishment by Scott.
Excellent. Well,
congratulations.
Yeah, very well done. I'm sure it'll be very popular when people start seeing the idea behind it. In fact, it's so unique, I think he's actually applied for a patent or something for it because it's such a cool idea. Now, you just got back from a trip yourself, right?
I did. I just came back from Arizona. I was teaching a 4-day workshop for Great American Photography Workshops, and that's going to kick me off into a tutorial because I have a photo that I took on that workshop.
What a coincidence.
Great time, just an amazing time. Got to meet some really, really cool people. So before we go any further, it's kind of bugging me. I just got to get rid of that little piece of sky right up at the top here, just because it's there and it shouldn't be. There we go. All right, so what I want to show you here is how to take an action and make it a little bit more flexible, how we can use a very, very cool technique that I learned from Dan Margulis, that little LAB color boost move, but put it into an action that we can really get a lot out of. So I'm going to go to my actions palette here, and I'm going to create a brand new action. We'll call it LAB color boost, and hit record. And the first move is to actually go into the LAB color space. So we'll go to image, mode, and I'll choose LAB color. And I'm going to hide my action palette just so you can see what's going on here. And now I want to duplicate the layer. So Command J on the Mac, Control J on the PC. We'll go into curves, Command M. And if you don't see the grid that I see here, under curve display options, you'll see this is the grid you probably see. But if you click on the icon to the right, you see a more detailed grid. And what we're going to do is generally you'll move this over 1, 2, or 3 grid squares. And we'll start off in the A channel. the thing is how do you really know whether or not you want to move it over 1, 2, or 3? Well, what I do is I start off with 3, all right? And whatever you do to the top, do to the bottom. And whatever you do to A, go and do to B. All right, so I'll move it 3 grid squares for A and 3 grid squares for B. And then I'll click OK. Now at this point, it's probably a little bit too much, but on some photos it may work. So what you don't want to do is you want to leave yourself a little bit of flexibility here. So I'm going to leave it at that for this one, and then I'm just going to double click on the layer and call it 3 grid squares. All right, and then we'll hide it. Now let's go to our background again. We'll duplicate that, and I'm going to go and hit Command-M, go back into Curves, go to my A channel, and this time just move it over 2 squares. And what we're doing here is we're creating an action that does this for us. So the next photo I come upon, all I've got to do is just apply the action, and then I can make the choice after. So we'll move this one down to, click OK, and that probably looks a little bit better for this photo. So I could do it again, and I could just do it 1 grid square, but I'm going to go ahead and just go back over into my RGB color mode. Don't flatten, because we want to keep these layers. And by the way, it's not like converting between RGB and CMYK where you're losing color information. That's not happening between LAB and RGB. So now we'll go back to our action. We'll click on Stop. All right. Now at this point, I've got 2 layers in here, and now I can figure out which one do I like better. Do I like the one with 2 grid squares, or do I like the one where I moved it 3 squares? So you can pick, and that's what gives you more flexibility, and you can go all the way down to 1 square, and an action does it for you. So now if I delete both of these layers, and I start off, I'll just go to my Actions palette, and click on my action, run the action here, you'll see Photoshop goes through, it creates both of those layers for us. So each time that I come in and I want to apply this technique to a photo, I don't have to do it over and over again. I can do it right there just once.
Very cool idea. I know
Thank you.
a lot of people have talked about creating that as an action, just the whole LAB, you know, boost thing. But that idea of making a couple or 2 or 3 different varieties of the same one is
just have Photoshop
makes
do the
perfect
work,
sense.
and you pick the best one after.
Very logical.
Well, thank you.
And
I'm a logical kind of
useful.
guy.
He is very logical.
Speaking of logic, I think now is a logical time to take a break.
Certainly.
All right, we'll be back, logically.
Yeah, Bob. We're gonna need some stuff. Lots of stuff, actually. I'm gonna need 6 notebooks, 3 printers, an office phone system, a wireless network, and software, of course.
Need a better way to work? Try the new Adobe Acrobat 8 Professional. Create, combine, and control Adobe PDF documents and collaborate with virtually anyone, anywhere. For the latest in Adobe software, we're there. CDW.
Well, we are back from that short break.
Logically.
Logically, that was a very logical place to break, as it always is. Now, in a moment, we'll hear from a special guest that we had drop by.
Yes.
David Zeiser was in town. He has
Very,
some
very cool
interesting
stuff.
things to share with you.
You will
But
want to see this.
before we do that, I just want to mention, make sure, if you haven't already done so, that you go to cruisingthroughlife.com, because next August, Matt and I, along with Moose Peterson and Lori Excel, are going to be teaching on a 7-day cruise to Hawaii. And along with just getting the information, you can also win a free cruise.
Sweet.
So cruisingthroughlife.com, go there, get information about our cruise that we're going to be on, and also enter that free contest, and you might be joining us.
A little bit about what we'll be doing. So you've got Moose Peterson and Lori Excel, you know, pretty much legendary photographers, and there'll be a lot of shooting, but there'll also be a lot of classroom time.
Right.
So I've been to Hawaii once, and the best thing about Hawaii is you can shoot everything. You've got sunrises, sunsets, wildlife, macro, landscapes, people, anything you want, you've got to shoot in Hawaii.
Yeah,
And
it's
we've got
going to be,
7 days to
I'm
do
so
it.
looking forward to it, because the Alaska cruise was a fantastic experience. This is going to be similar and yet different because of the locale.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of going out and shooting, and then while the boat is just cruising to the next place, being in a classroom, the facility on this boat is, from what I see, it looks great. So we aim
Dave
at,
likes to gamble a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
He'll gamble with your money.
Yes, right. And Matt and I are even teaching a couple of joint classes,
Yeah.
so we can do all kinds of interesting stuff
Fun
about
stuff.
automating, just like that
Can't
last
wait.
technique you just did.
Yeah.
So, hey,
Can't
so tell us, I wasn't here when Dave Zeiser was here. You dropped in?
Oh
Tell
yeah,
me
so
about
Mr.
that.
David Zeiser, who's just an amazing wedding photographer, dropped in to see us here. And as you know, whenever people drop in, we grab them and do whatever we can to get them to do something on Photoshop TV. So he did just that, a very, very great backlighting technique for brides and grooms in a wedding. So let's take a look. Well, welcome, David.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
So David stopped here in our Tampa studios on your way down to shoot a wedding in Key Largo, and it's a 4-day wedding celebration. Everything from the golf outing, the rehearsal dinner,
A multi-exposure, I figure 8,000 to 10,000 exposures are going to be made over the next 4 days on this particular wedding. So we have my whole team coming down from Cincinnati joining us, so we have 4 of us on the job down there. Should be a kick, though. Should be a kick.
Cool, cool. Well, so as you know, whenever anybody comes by our studio, we never let you out without doing some type of a tip or something that the Photoshop TV audience will like. So you got something for us today?
I do. You know what? And since we're finishing up a wedding in Chicago, passing on through Tampa, on the way to Key Largo, it's been wedding central at my studio here these last couple of weeks, it seems. And I thought, what I bring to the Photoshop TV this time is really this whole backlighting thing. This is something I've been doing for a long, long time, way back in the film days, way back before we had radio-controlled flashes. In fact, the way we used to backlight our brides and grooms in those days was I would set my camera, much slower film than ISO 1600s or 3200s. I mean, we're back in the 100s and the 400 ISO days. But I would have my camera set, which would be a Hasselblad medium format camera at the time. It would be set to about a half a second. My assistant was in the back with the flash, and we would do a 3, 2, 1 countdown. And when I say 1, he would hit the open flash button, and we would try to get it in that half a second exposure. Yeah. And it worked beautifully well. We were on tripods, and I've been doing that photograph probably since 1978, 1979. So for a long, long time. Yeah. Let's just leave it at that.
You got it down.
So now with the advent of radios, way back in the late 70s, early 80s, it's made life a whole lot simpler. But we continue to do that photograph because it's what we call the money shot. I mean, it just sells every single time. We do it in the church, and we also do it at the wedding reception when the bride and groom are dancing. And what I want to talk about is show the basic setup, how we do it here today on Photoshop User TV, and then also just share some images with the viewers too about some of the other things that kind of come out of that whole backlighting situation. Different ways we can use it. What happens if we just use it as backlighting? Maybe we just use it as an accent light. What happens if we use it as a backlight and the light bounces off of, say, the bride's wedding gown into somebody else's face? What kind of effect do we get there? So there's a lot of cool stuff that really comes out of this little backlighting technique.
Great.
So,
well,
should we give it a try here?
I think I am your male model, unfortunately for you. And I think we've got Jen, who's one of the women on our editing team. I think she's going to model up here with me.
All right. A great-looking couple, I have to say. A great-looking couple.
Promise me that my wife does not see this video.
Or Jen's husband as well, right? Well, anyway, when so many photographers, when they're doing that silhouette photograph, now that doesn't mean with the backlighting, but when they're doing the silhouette photograph, they will bring the couple together in not the most natural of ways. So let's do that with Jen and Matt right here. Let me have you guys just turn directly towards each other, point your toes at each other, reach out and hold each other's hands below your waist. And we can even get a little bit closer than that. And now just look at each other's eyes. You know what? And when we see people standing like this, I have to ask all of you viewers in the audience right here, have you ever stood that way with your loved one, face to face, staring at them, holding hands, looking them straight in the eye? Does that feel comfortable and natural? Is there any sense of romance in that particular pose?
Every day.
It screams posed, and it doesn't scream any kind of intimacy or anything here. So let's go ahead and first of all, let's just refine how we can bring the couple together. I'm going to ask you guys to come together about 45 degrees angle, inside arms around each other, and then outside hands. And I always like to do, Matt, let's just do palm up. And then Jen, palm down, manicure towards me, and let me see the manicure just a bit. Just slide the hand back. No, go under his thumb. There you go, perfect. A little bit lower. And now, and that's how people might be standing around, if they're dancing or whatever. But now let's refine that. Now just turn heads only towards each other. Okay? And I would even ask Jen to just flip your hair off the back shoulder if you can. Perfect. Just looking right at each other again. And now let's refine it a bit more. Bring your kind of shoulders and hips a little tighter together. Just pull. Jen, come out towards me just a little bit more. A little bit more. Still looking at each other again. And I'm now going to ask them just to bring their foreheads just a little closer together. There you go. And just a slight Scarlett O'Hara, Rhett Butler, which means just a slight bend back, Jen. Just more, peek at me just 1 second. Just tilt this way. Wait, okay. And now still looking up at Matt. Matt, come in a little closer to her. and just relax shoulders and everything. Yeah, just kind of getting easy.
I keep thinking my wife is going to see this.
But anyway, you can see that we're getting just a little bit closer. Forehead's even a little closer together. That's kind of the secret, because it just builds just a better sense of intimacy when we're bringing the couples together. Now, having them, you guys can relax. Let's talk about how we're going to set up the lighting now. Now, the backlighting has to be in a certain position, and it doesn't just have to be behind them, but it has to be a certain distance behind them. And some people might just say, well, let's go ahead, let's just get the light behind them, let's say 4 feet away. Well, when we bring up the diagram, you can see that with the light about 4 feet behind the subject, you can see that it's got a very big oblique angle. It needs to come from the flash head around the edge of the subject and try to find its way back into the camera lens here. It's not going to make the bend. It's just not. So I found that 12 to 15 feet is a nice working distance that we can have my assistant with the backlight behind the subject. Because then when it's that much further back, it makes more of a direct line from the flash head around the edge of the subject. And of course, it's going to be picking up and highlighting the veil and so forth. That helps us as well. There's also a principle called diffraction taking place here where the light will actually bend just a bit around the sharp edge or around our edges here and bring it back into the camera just a little bit more. So that being said, why don't we have you guys back in that romantic position. And I'm going to ask LaDon, my assistant, to step in with the light. And basically what I'm using the Quantum. I love the Quantum. I've been using it for years and years. It's a Quantum T5D. It's got a Quantum 2x2 power pack on it and gives us 200 watt seconds of light, which is like a lot of light coming out of the flash head. I'm going to be shooting at ISO 800. I'm going to ask LaDon to be at half power. Typically, I'm at a 5.6 aperture. I'm shooting today, by the way, with a brand new Canon 40D, which I love. Just got the 2 of them just in the last couple weeks. Love it. I'm going to be at 5.6, and because of all our studio lights here and everything, I'm actually going to have my shutter speed basically up at around 250th of a second because I really want to reduce the effect of all our studio lights here. So, LaDon, are you ready back there? Okay, let's have you guys kind of come together again. I'm just going to kind of come back here. And I like to kind of keep it low here. Now, we might see LaDon in the background. Let me have you guys bring the legs. Matt, your right leg. Jen, your left leg closer to his right leg. And just kind of come together at the hips. Perfect. Looking at each other again. And I'm just going to cut off a lot of the ceiling because I don't want that to light up too much. And you can see we've got these nice shadows coming right towards camera right here. And of course, if she's in a wedding gown, it's picking up the backlighting of the gown and so forth. The groom's tux is highlighted just a bit. And we would just take the photograph just like that. And the next photograph I would not these guys, but I would ask our bride and groom to give each other just a little kiss. We take a couple more. And I would do them full length. I would do them half length. I mean, we got the wonderful digital zooms these days, so we can really, really take a lot of different variations of the theme. With my assistant in one place, me in one place, we get a lot of variety in the whole theme, in this whole backlighting thing.
All right, so David actually goes through and looks at images and different photos of different ways that he uses that very same technique, and you got to see it. We didn't get to fit it in the show just because we still want to keep a manageable download file size for you, but we know that a lot of you probably want to see it. So you can go to PhotoshopUserTV.com and you can download that portion of the show and check it out because you got to see it. He goes through about 10 photos. Each one is a different scenario of there wasn't 12 feet behind the bride, or there wasn't any place to go, so how did he light it and where did he light it? So
yeah, very cool. And also make sure you check out Dave's blog because he's got some really cool stuff. Digital Pro Talk, we'll put the link on our website as well, so you can find out the kind of things he talks about on his blog.
Technique Tuesday, he posts a photo every day and shows you some of the stuff behind the scenes.
Cool.
Cool. Well, that said, speaking of David's, Mr. David Cross. I've never called you David before.
Yeah, no, you haven't. Usually I only hear that when I'm in trouble.
David.
Yeah, David.
Would you like to do a tutorial for us?
Not if you call me David. I'll wait.
Doesn't feel right. All right, Dave.
Thank you, sir.
Dave Ski.
It's like when I was student teaching in my college days, and the first time a young student came up and said, Mr. Cross, I was like, well, is my dad here? I was like, what? It just seemed weird. Anyway,
it doesn't work.
That's got nothing to do with this. I have another little take on the smart object world because it occurred to me the other day when I was playing around with something. Actually, I was teaching a seminar and talking about one of the challenges we face. Here's a simple example. I just put together a few layers. It's nothing special, but just something that I want to play with. And at this point, I want to sharpen the whole thing. Well, that would suggest either flattening, which is never a great idea in my book, or doing this shortcut you might have heard us talk about, where you do Command Option Shift E or Control Alt Shift E, and that makes like a flattened version on top. So for example, now I could go in and do something like sharpen. The problem is this: if you do the sharpening and then later on you think, I want to change something, for example this pattern, I would literally have to throw this away and start all over again. So it occurred to me that a better plan might be to take advantage of Smart Objects. So I'm going to select all these layers and make them into a group, Command or Control G. And one of the things we haven't really talked about too much is you can not only make a smart object out of a layer, you can also make it out of a group. So if I now choose Convert for Smart Filters, you'll see it's going to take this group and change it into a smart filter or smart object that I can apply a filter to. So now it looks again like one layer, even though it's really a group of layers. So now I could do my sharpening, just like this, and I'm going to make it a fairly overdone amount of sharpening so you can really see what's happening. So I click OK. There I've got the effect that I want, but now when I look at it and say, you know what, I'm not sure that this pattern I put on there is really the way I want. Maybe it's a little intense. Well, now I just simply double click on this smart object. It'll come back to, it'll open a document basically that has the group of layers, and I can take this layer, for example, and lower the opacity of my pattern and maybe turn off this photo filter adjustment layer. When I close and save it, it goes back now to my other document and immediately updates it and resharpens it at the lower amount. So it's basically a nice solution. Instead of having to do that whole flat invisible layers but always be throwing it out, this becomes an editable layer just by turning a group of layers into a smart object.
Sweet.
Simple and straightforward and easy, and you can do it too.
Love simple and straightforward.
Time spent. No, I'm not. But once again, good time to do something other than us doing something, so how about we throw it to the news?
I'm all for it.
Okay, let's go. Throw it.
Hey guys, it's Stephanie Cross again with the news for you today. First off, Digital Anarchy has released version 3 of its popular software, Null Light Factory. The new features give increased control over the look of hundreds of lighting effects. And next, Acvis has released Chameleon version 5, which is a true breakthrough in photo collage creation. This version includes montage mode, which transfers objects to a new background with a clean result. Chameleon sells for $75 and can be downloaded at acvis.com. Check it out. I'm Stephanie Cross, and I'll see you back next week.
This podcast is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of spoken word entertainment. Get a free audiobook download of your choice when you sign up today.
Well, folks, before Scott did leave, he managed to record a little segment with Dan Steinhardt, also known as Dano from Epson America. So let's jump over to that and take a look.
Well, hey everybody, we have a special guest in the studio. Of course, I just told you that on the show, but our special guest is Dan Steinhardt. He's the marketing manager of professional imaging at Epson America. Dano, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
Well,
to be here.
We call him Dano, of course. Everybody calls him Dano. We've known Dano for years. And the reason I asked Dano to come down here was, of course, if you read my blog a few weeks ago, and of course, if you've seen the press releases, because it's the buzz all over the web, their new exhibition fiber paper just came out, and we've never had anybody on the show to talk about paper, Dano. But this isn't just paper, because, I mean, new paper comes out all the time. You've never heard us say, hey, let's do a special segment on paper. But this paper takes things to a whole new level. This is the real deal. And so we asked Dano to come down, and we're like, Dano, come down and talk about paper.
Right, and are you feeling a little insecure not having a Mac to drive? We're actually
Yes.
going to look at a photograph?
Yes, I'm feeling very insecure without having any electronics in front of me, and Jason wouldn't let me have them there, so we fired him. Anyway, so the new paper came out. It's the big buzz, and I asked Dano to bring some sample prints. And the thing about it is, I'm not going to show you the prints yet, but the thing that you're going to miss at home is this. Because everybody I've given a sample to, the first thing that they do is they touch it and they just go, ooh. And it's this part of the print is why there'll always be prints, why prints are so special. Because it becomes real when you hold it in your hand. And I don't care how good it looks on the screen, it always looks better in print. But this paper, of all the things I've seen, the very best. Tell us about it.
Epson Exhibition Fiber paper is a paper designed to think in terms of what were the revered silver gelatin prints of the darkroom, but at the same time, how can we go beyond that and work in color? In fact, when we were in beta with this, and I was doing some images with my own stuff, and I brought my own stuff so that we don't have to worry about other photographers saying, how come my stuff wasn't on there, whatever. The product managers kept saying, dude, I think you're missing the point. This thing's going to be great in color. So for the first time, we have a paper you can do great black and white, and you can do great color. In black and white, the D-Max is what most people see immediately.
Right.
We're getting 2.6 through the advanced black and white mode. In the darkroom, I think 2.4 was about the max it could be reached.
2.6 is crazy.
So that's the thing that most people see immediately are the blacks. But there's also, as you mentioned, there's the touch, the feel, the surface. It feels like a double weight silver gelatin print.
It's the real deal. I mean, it really has that. I've never had that experience with anything that came out of an inkjet before. And I got to tell you real quickly, Dano is my all-time #1 favorite urban shooter, period.
Not urban folklore.
Not urban folklore.
Okay. I'll accept that.
You know what I just said. But I swear, he's like the most modest guy about his photography, and he sends me stuff, and I just want to absolutely kill him. But anyway, so this is, he shot this at Photoshop World. Right. I'm like in there like having lunch or something. He's always outside shooting, and I see these things like, where'd you get that? He goes, oh, I was just out in front of the Mandalay Bay. Right. Anyway, he brought some of his stuff, but this stuff is unbelievable. So
the other thing that unfortunately won't be able to see on internet television, TV, what's it called?
We call it TV.
Okay, good, because I have this face made for podcasting, so this is a new thing
No,
for me.
In that case, it's a podcast.
Okay, but if you look on Edge, and this is what a lot of people look for, it's the surface texture. And this gets back to what was known as F-surface dried matte. There's a long history about F-surface dried matte. I won't go into all the details about it because it's a very emotional topic. But so much of it is our memory of what F-surface dried matte was. Last time I made a print was in 1996 in a darkroom. So I went back to all my college assignments and cringed when I saw what I was doing, but I saw what the surface was, and that's what we were trying to achieve with this.
Yeah, and you've nailed it, absolutely nailed it. Let's see a couple other prints. Now we're just showing off Dano's stuff, but I'm making him do it because I love the stuff that he shoots.
So what people are telling us is that the texture, the weight, the feel, the D-Max it feels like you're back in the darkroom. And there's something about, as you were saying, how something feels. As ironic as it is, when these things get mounted and they get framed, you can't really say it. You can't tell. But there's something about the print that makes it that way.
Absolutely.
And
let's show camera 2. Hi, camera 2. There it is. All right. And
now, when we were collaborating with many photographers on this project, and as we went into beta and as we thought about when we were going to bring this product out, we kept putting a certain criteria against this. Is this worthy of your signature?
Yeah,
can you put your brand on this paper?
I would love to put my signature actually on these prints right here. I would love to put my signature on these. In fact, I will. Do you have a...
This is just in between Photoshop World. I was changing planes. Now you have to take little regional jets where I live.
I hate him. I don't like this guy.
And now, as I was mentioning, people were saying, oh, black and white down, because many of my colleagues had never been in a darkroom. I've been in a darkroom because you can see what's happening.
The last darkroom I was in, basically had been converted into a beer cooler. I kid you not, it was all beer. Oh, you got to show this print.
So, and they said, what about color? So at Photoshop World in Miami earlier this year, I went out and found this. Now a lot of people go to South Beach and they photograph buildings.
Buildings, yeah, architecture.
I like to zoom in on buildings because I knew that we would be on Photoshop TV.
All right. Hey, we're going to wrap things up here, but I'm going to real quick show a couple more prints of Dano's here because I have to. It's my thing.
Okay.
All right.
Now hold it by the edges.
Oh,
it's
yeah, I know. Hey, look.
Okay, that's a fine art print.
Anyway, this paper, of all the paper I've ever seen come out of an inkjet printer, this is by far, I mean, it's not just the feel, but it's the absolute quality of the print. This is what I would say is the real deal. It's the real deal.
And
Detroit
we have been, this
airport.
Is where you're going to be going to, or just came from.
Came from, yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to mention was that we've worked very closely with Pixel Genius, who has provided custom profiles for everyone's use on all the appropriate Epson machines, because at Epson, we think in terms of an entire system. It's the printer, it's the ink, it's the media, so we put those things together.
All right, one last thing. We've heard the official Epson America version stuff, but give me the Dano, wrap it up for me in a box, and give me the Dano speak instead of the corporate speak.
I was very fortunate to go to a high school that was renowned in the 1970s, Reseda High, and our instructor was Warren King. And there used to be a sign above his door. And we used to walk to him with trays full of fixture, talking about how we made this print. And he would just point to the sign and say, don't tell me how good you are, show me. So we know about D-Max, we know about thickness, we know about grams per square meter, we know all these technical things we've been talking about. But ultimately, it's about the print. And ultimately, it's about how the technology, printer, ink, and media get out of the way to empower the creative professional to make the print so that you're falling into the image and not looking at the paper.
That was so uncorporate and unplanned and so extemporaneous that I'm going to wrap things up with that. Daniel, thank you, buddy, for being
Thanks,
here.
man. Good to be
Enjoyed
here.
it very much, and back to the regularly scheduled program.
Hey, that new Epson paper is getting lots and lots of interest from people.
Very, very,
Right.
very, very much.
Right.
So,
Hey, speaking of Dano,
we're going to Hawaii
did we
next
mention
year.
we're going to Hawaii next year?
You should come.
You should come. It'd be great.
Come join us.
CruisingThroughLife.com. Win a contest. Come on, join us. It'd be great.
All right.
Speaking of contests,
Hey, good segue.
Yeah, I know,
See,
I was like, whew.
I thought it was just a blatant plug, but now it's not.
It was, but now it's not. We had a contest last week, as we do, well, each week. And last week we showed you a graphic and said, what's missing from this button? And the answer was save set. Oh, wow. And as always, we had many, many, many correct answers from which we randomly drew this person as the winner. Good for this person.
Congratulations, that person.
That person. So, once again, we shall follow that with another contest.
And
What will they win?
They will win, as promised, Scott Kelby's 7-point system for Photoshop. Made it to #1 in computer books on Amazon. So you will get one of the first copies. This thing is literally like coming off the presses now.
It's
so
smoking. It's
you
hot
might
off
get
the press.
copies before anybody else does.
Right, including us. Also, you will get a NAP membership and, of course, Photoshop User Magazine. And I should mention, if you're already a member, of course, we'll extend your membership.
Yeah.
So it's not only for new members.
You know, that's good.
I mean, it never occurred to me until just now.
People ask that a lot, actually.
So, in order to win both of those fabulous things and be the first person on the block with this new book, you must take a look at this dialog box and say, how do you get this type of gradient? Gosh, I wonder how you do that. And go to PhotoshopUser.com website and enter the contest, and you know the rules. Enter once, all that stuff.
They've heard it before, I hope.
Hope you win.
Yeah. Well, before we close the show, we have a whole bunch of crap that we like to do because we feel that we need to extend the show as long as we possibly can. So the beginning of that crap is 3 things to do. I'll start off with taking a look at a blog that I've started visiting a lot lately, Mike Wong, he works for On One Software. So it's called One on One with Mike Wong. So very cool blog, lots of stuff about digital photography as well as software. So we'll put the link at PhotoshopUserTV.com.
Right. I'm going to suggest if you're at all into photography and you either make a business out of it or want to make a business, there's a blog that I check out just about every day called Photopreneur. And it's really on the business side of photography, how to sell stock photos, how to increase your wedding business, how to turn a part-time job into full-time job, all that kind of stuff. And once again, we'll put the link out there so you can check out Photopreneur blog.
Cool. And finally, I'm going to show you a picture here. You can see a picture up on screen. And this is a question, the reason why I mentioned it, this is a question that I saw and got a lot while I was on the workshop in Arizona, because here's a sunrise scene over at Horseshoe Bend. And when we were there photographing, you can see that I have detail in the sky here, but the foreground's really dark. And I've seen a lot of people getting the blinkies on their camera, you know, the highlight warning where it's flashing at them. And it just occurred to me that, you know, a lot of folks don't realize that there's these graduated neutral density filters. So I'm going to jump over to a web browser. I have some from Tiffin. I'll show you where they are on here, and then you can go find an equivalent elsewhere. But the Tiffin ones work great. If you scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see that there's neutral density filters, and there's also color graduated filters. But take a look at what it looks like, and you'll see where it comes in handy. As you see how it's kind of dark on the top and then clear on the bottom, so it allows you to expose for that sky, but yet keep the detail on the bottom, because then otherwise the sky would be blown out. So you can buy them from Tiffin, but you can buy them from anywhere. The whole point is to grab one of these things, because out in the field it will significantly make your job a lot easier in Photoshop.
I noticed when in Alaska that Moose and Lori actually had just a little, like a plastic card they could also just hold in front of the lens as well, if they just wanted to see what it would look like, and it made quite a difference.
So the one I have is actually a screw-on, and you're pretty much, you know, it's half and half, but you do have these little squares that you can actually just hold in front of the lens. You can move it up or down. So
cool.
One of those things that makes our life much easier later on.
Right.
Is it back to me again?
Well, yes, but let me talk for just a moment or two so you can do whatever you need to do to prepare in case you need to prepare for...
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. And now, here's Matt with one for the road.
Yeah, because again, we like to drag the show on as long as possible. Here's one that I see all the time. So if you go inside of Photoshop and you take a look under the File menu and you go down to Automate, you'll see all these automations. If I go into, let's say, Batch, it lets me do a select number of things here when it comes to which photos I want to process. So you can choose a folder, you can import, or you can open files. But that's kind of a pain in the neck, because what about if I don't want to do every single photo in the folder? Well, that's where Bridge comes in. If you go into Bridge, you go under the Tools menu, and you go down to Photoshop, you'll see these same automations that you saw inside of Photoshop, all right? But now, it lets you run them as the source is Bridge. So where does that come in? You know, think of this as a web gallery. You know, I've got a bunch of photos in here. I want some of them in a web gallery, but you know, maybe not all of them. Like here's a duplicate, so I wouldn't want that one. And maybe I don't want to put that one, so now I can visually actually choose what I'm going to run my automations on.
Right.
So it's in Bridge.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
Very logical.
Very thankful. Logical and
substandard.
Substandard.
The whole show has been substandard.
As promised.
Yeah.
Because we like to keep our promises.
We do.
So, we'll see you in Hawaii. I mean, did I say that out loud?
No.
Thanks again for watching. We'd like to thank our sponsors, as we always do, and thank you, our viewers, for sticking with us and watching. And we'll see you next time. I'm Dave Cross.
Matt Klaskowski.
We'll see you next time on another episode of Photoshop User TV. Bye.
Putting your car keys in the refrigerator so you remember to turn the refrigerator back on.
Get rid of